So what's up guys, I am Black Ops Amazing, welcome back to another Zombies video, back with another Q&A, taking your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs and answering them. So as always, if you have anything to say, leave it down below, make sure you drop a like rating if you want to, also subscribe, but let's get into this. Here we go. So the first question of today from Ragnarok says, hey BOA, in the original trailer for Origins, Tank Dempsey has the Remington Pistol from Buried. How did he get it? So this isn't just for the Origins trailer, we've actually seen in many different trailers are characters using guns that we don't actually get to use in that map. In the Origins intro cutscene, we also see Takeo has the katana, which at this point was a weapon that we've been asking for a very long time, and we never actually got to use until, I believe it was Revelations. But like I said, it's not only this map, there are plenty of intro cutscenes where we've seen the characters holding weapons that we simply can't use in game. I don't believe there's anything to this. It's probably just Treyarch trying to make the intros look cooler, so I really wouldn't think anything of it. As for the Remington Pistol, personally I can't actually tell what this is. It does kind of look like the Remington, although you do say in your question that it's a wonder weapon. I don't believe it is. It was just a weapon specific to Buried, but yeah, it doesn't mean anything. The next question from Tatum Lafever says, hey BOA, can you explain to me how there are so many Richthofens? Well, it is simply because each and every universe out there has a version of Richthofen. We don't know how many different dimensions, timelines, universes, fractures there are out there. Hundreds, thousands, millions, we don't know. And Richthofen isn't the only character there is more than one of. There's also just as many Dempseys, Nikolai's, Takeos, Dr. Maxis's, Samantha, Sophia's. So there are so many of them because they all come from different timelines, different universes. I mean, unless they've figured out cloning, which I don't believe they have, then that's why. The next question from Sam Upton says, why are there two different alternate endings for Shangri-La and 5? So you may be thinking, what are you on about? How are there two different endings for these maps? Well, starting off with Shangri-La, we know the Easter egg in that map revolved around Brock and Gary. Those two characters were pivotal into helping the Ultimus crew collect the focusing stone. We know that Brock and Gary were two British explorers who were searching Shangri-La to prove the existence of Agartha. They came here by plane, they landed, where eventually they recognized that it was made by an ancient civilization, but was built by people of the modern era. And so as they continued to explore, they would come across the focusing stone for themselves, they would attempt to remove it, and when they did, Brock and Gary were teleported back in time to the beginning where they first found the temple, placing them in an infinite time loop. And so when the Ultimus crew arrive here, we ask Brock and Gary, who are trapped, to help us collect the stone, and that's exactly what they do. Kind of similar to Call of the Dead, where we asked those characters to help us collect the golden rod. So that was in the original timeline. Brock and Gary arrived at Shangri-La safely, they survived but became trapped in an infinite loop. However, we discover from the Chronorium, and also we learnt this from a cipher in Zetsubo no Shima, that on April the 25th, 1956, the same date that Brock and Gary travelled to Shangri-La originally, this time, the plane that they were on, as a result of a freak astroperic event, crashed into the mountains. This was a side effect of the temporal rifts that were created by Primus whilst they were travelling to Gorod Kurovi, and as the Zetsubo no Shima cipher tells us, they died. It says, urgent telegram. We've just received word that the private plane carrying the expedition crew encountered a freak astroperic event which caused it to crash, killing all on board including the famous explorers Brock and Gary. This comes week after their announcement of the location of Shangri-La. So we can see in the original timeline, Brock and Gary survived, this plane crash never happened, they got to explore Shangri-La, however, they did become trapped in an infinite time loop. But in this alternate ending, in this different dimension, because of Gorod Kurovi, because of the Primus crew using rifts to teleport, this caused a disruption in Shangri-La, something went wrong, possibly a rift happened there, which could have spat the private plane out that was carrying Brock and Gary. I mean, in the Shangri-La loading screen, we do see there are tornadoes, lightning, the Black Sun logo on the floor. Possibly this is the astroperic event that caused the plane to crash as a result of Gorod Kurovi happening. Again, we don't exactly know, but what we do know is there are two different endings. In the original, they lived. In this alternate one, they died. And the same thing goes for 5. The Chronorium tells us on November the 6th of 1963, in the Pentagon, JFK, Richard Nixon and Robert McNamara meet Fidel Castro in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Due to the events at the Cosmodrome, a zombie outbreak occurs, and Samantha sends Yuri to the Pentagon to thwart their survival. After Gersh is freed and the Ultimus crew departs from the Cosmodrome, the outbreak ends at the Pentagon and all 4 survive. So we see in the original timeline, our 5 characters all live. The zombie outbreak ends because the Ultimus crew leave Ascension and go to their next location, and so that means that Samantha sends the zombies after them, which means because the 2 maps are linked, they also leave the Pentagon, allowing the 5 characters to survive. But in the alternate timeline, in the Dimension 63 universe, again on November the 6th, 1963, as the zombie outbreak is happening in the Pentagon, hiding in a closet, Robert McNamara records a message confirming that JFK, Nixon and Castro have died as a result of the zombie outbreak. And then moments later, he dies.
This is Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. I am transmitting on a secure channel in the most dire of circumstances. The Pentagon is under attack from an unknown enemy. As of this moment, I am safely ensconced inside a janitor's closet. Unfortunately, I fear the President and the VIPs may not have found similar safe haven. From what I have observed, our attackers may be blighted by some kind of sickness. Either that or they're just dirty hippies under the influence of hallucinogenic substances. I can only hope that this message will bring rescue. Until then, please, pray for me.
So again, that is the alternate ending. Both very similar for 5 and Shangri-La, where originally the 5 characters and Brock and Gary survive, and then in these alternate endings, in this different fractured timeline dimension, Brock and Gary, along with all of the 5 characters, die. The next question from Diane Sanchez says, "Hey BOA, I have a question about the Primus crew. How did they get from Dreisendrache to Zetsubo to Gorod? And also, I want to know, like, on foot teleportation or the summoning key." So we know that the characters regrouped in the Giant, where they killed Ultimus Richthofen. They completed the quest there, they set the beacon for Maxius to find them, and then they take a robot from the Giant facility and use it to travel to Dreisendrache, and we can see that in the intro cutscene. The characters are in the robot, pursuing the trucks carrying Dempsey's body. So when they arrive at the castle, again they complete the quest, they recover Dempsey's test subject, they set things right and destroy the moon with Griffin Station, and then they leave Dreisendrache and travel to Zetsubo no Shima. Now this one we don't have an answer for, the Chronorium doesn't tell us. In the intro cutscene we just see our characters are on this boat traveling to the island. So how exactly they got from Austria to the island of Pompeii, we don't know. I would have said do they teleport, but surely they would have teleported straight to the island instead of the ship, so I'm thinking they possibly drove here or used some transportation, went to the docks and took the ship to the island. And then how did they get from Zetsubo to Gorod? Well, again, as we see in the intro cutscene, they use a rift. They must have opened one in Zetsubo, stepped in it, and it spat them out at Gorod, along with Peter McCain. So there we go. The only one we're unsure of is Zetsubo, but now I think about it, they probably also used a rift, but surely it would have made more sense for them to go straight to the island instead of the ship. Perhaps Richthofen got his coordinates slightly wrong. I'm not too sure. And then the final question of today from Omar says, "Hey BOA, what is your favourite storyline, the Ether or the Chaos? Love your videos, keep up the good work." So I think this is a pretty easy one to answer, but my favourite storyline is of course the Ether. The storyline of Chaos hasn't gone on nearly long enough for me to say it is better. The Ether storyline has been going on for what, 10 years now, whereas the Chaos has gone on for a few months, and plus Chaos was pretty boring up until Ancient Evil, where it's actually really started to pick up. Voyage of the Dead 9 and especially Dead of the Night had pretty boring storylines. Nothing really was interesting. There was no room for, you know, us guessing. It was pretty straightforward and simple, whereas obviously Ether is a big confusing mess, which is one of the reasons why I love it and don't at the same time. But Chaos has only just got good in my opinion with Ancient Evil and all the plot twists that we've just seen. I honestly can't wait to get to Season 2 and see where it's going to go from here. But for me, it's still nowhere near as good as the Ether. I believe maybe in 10 years it could overtake it. As we know, these final 2 maps for DLC 3 and 4 are going to be our last Ether maps. That is where the storyline will end. So I'm assuming it's only going to be Chaos in Black Ops 5 or whatever Treyarch's next game is, which I am sad about. But yeah, it's definitely the Ether. Let me know yours in the comment section below. But anyway, guys, there we go. That is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.